Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Hot 97, a special day. We are talking to the Central Park Five. If you're not familiar, they have there's a documentary out right now about their case that happened back in the 80s here in New York City. A really polarizing case and tragic because these guys served a whole lot of time for a crime they never committed.
What happened that day, and be horrified by ourselves.
New York in the late 1980s was a completely schizophrenic, divided city.
New York's now the capital of racial violence.
If I had more bullets, I would have shot them all again and again.
Criminality, gang wars, drug wars. We were supposed to be afraid. It would have been irrational not to be afraid.
Off with the camera, man!
Last night, a woman jogger was found unconscious and partially clothed in Central Park. She was beaten and sexually assaulted.
A woman jogging in Central Park. Central Park was holy. It was the crime of the century.
5 youths were arrested at 96th Street, all between 14 and 15 years of age.
They got him!
You can only imagine the pressure to have this crime solved, and solved quickly.
First we was all together, then they started to put us in different rooms separately.
What did you do? Who were you with? Who did you come with?
The tone was very scary. I felt like they might take us to the back of the precinct and kill us.
You're not gonna go home until you give up a story.
I told my son, go to the park that night. I feel guilty.
I'm telling the guy, I don't know what you're talking about. They're getting a little angry.
And they're like, you know you did it, didn't you?
He had been interrogated for over 24 hours. That amounts to pressure.
These young men were guilty. It was almost unquestioned.
The police controlled the story. They created the story.
They seized on the fears of the people, wilding the bestial characterization of the black man.
There's no DNA match whatsoever to any of these boys.
I was going nuts. No blood on the kids. Nobody could identify them, but if they confessed, and that was that.
A lot of people didn't do their jobs. Reporters, police, prosecutors, defense lawyers. This was institutional protectionism.
We falsely convicted them, and we walked away from our crime.
We have three of the Central Park Five right here. Why don't you guys introduce yourself real quick?
My name is Yusef Salam.
How you doing? I'm Raymond Santana.
And Corey Wise.
Give us a brief synopsis of what the Central Park Five went through and what your case was.
I'm just glad to be in the right place at the right time for Destiny, and for Destiny to show his face in 13 years later to bring upon this documentary with Miss Sarah Burns and Ken and her father, the great Ken Burns. And I'm glad we're all alive today.
So what happened? Take us back. Can you take us back there and tell, because there are kids right now, youngsters and people who aren't originally from New York who don't even know what the story is at all.
Well, basically the story takes place in 1989 of April, and it deals with the kidnapping of 5 kids and how we were charged with rape and robbery of the female jogger that was running in the park that night, and how we were coerced into making these false confessions, and how we spent, upwards from 6, 7 to over 13 years of our lives in prison, which later on in 2002, serial rapist who was known as Mateus Reyes, who was the East Side Slasher, came forward and he confessed and said that he committed the crime after he met Corey Wise in Auburn. And as a result, there was a year-long investigation and DNA match, and he became the sole perpetrator, and our convictions were vacated in 2003.
Wow. How long did each of you guys spend in jail specifically?
I spent 7 years.
7 as well.
Say about 13 and a half.
How come you were in prison longer than everyone else?
Because of the age. I was 16.
And everyone else at the time, what were the ages?
I was 14 years old.
14 and
I was 15.
And you were 15. And so people watching it at that time, you picked up the newspaper, saw it on the news, you saw the faces of 5 young black men who were underage.
Yes.
But still their photos were given to the public. Wasn't that an issue in itself?
Yeah, our photos were given to the public. Our addresses were given to the public.
Wow.
There were articles that were written. There was about 400 articles written on us within the first 2 weeks of the case, and they basically dissected our lives, told you where we lived at, where we were from, the type of neighborhoods. They even went to our schools, and they interviewed classmates and people from the neighborhood, and they put together like this whole story, of how we were bad kids.
And where were you guys from exactly, and what kind of kids were you?
Well, you know, both Corey and myself and Kevin Richardson, we were all from Schomburg Towers or Schomburg Plaza, you know. And the funny thing about it is that this whole thing about I always say is, you know, to be born a person of color is almost like to be born guilty. That's how the system sees you. This whole institution of racism kind of lives off of that. But the reality of the matter is that many of us came from very, very good homes. But the picture that was painted in the media was that we were these animals coming from the darker enclaves of society, roaming around and wanting to hassle and rape and rob people who were not.
Now, were you guys even in Central Park at or around Central Park any time around the time that they say this incident happened?
Well, according to the investigation, you know, we were with a group of other individuals, but we were about 400 feet away from where the incident happened. You know, there was other crimes that were committed that night, you know, by the group.
So was there just that night, was there happen to be a group of young men in Central Park bugging out? Is that how this whole thing came about?
Well, what happened was that it was a group of young men that were hanging out.
Okay.
And some of us, you know, we were young, 14, so we were followers. You know, you hang out with older guys, they say, come on, you come along. That was it. We can't say that. We can't talk about everybody's actions that night.
Okay.
But our actions were we weren't there to commit any crime. We were just being followers because we were the youngest.
See, and the reason, and I wanted you guys to is the criminalization of black and brown men in America is pretty common. We see most of the time you see young black men as either athletes or artists, and then beyond that you see us in some sort of trouble most of the time. So in this scenario where you have some young black men who were hanging out in Central Park, in retrospect, do you say to yourself, yo, young men, why are we even hanging out like that in Central Park, wilding out? Like, do you give that kind of advice to youth today?
From maybe other people that, you know, if the older kids were maybe up to no good, is there a thought that you go, even though you were done absolutely wrong by the system, do you wish that you just hadn't been hanging out with those kids who were getting into that kind of stuff to start out with?
The thing about it is that all of us, as Raymond is saying, none of us did any crimes. You know, I always maintain that the only crime that I committed that night was that I hopped the turnstile, because that's exactly the crime I committed. The problem with this whole thing is that, as you're saying, you know, as young people, we have to be more than just followers. We have to be wise and intelligent to what's going on in our surroundings. We need to be able to understand that this is a potential pitfall. And because it's a potential pitfall, if you pick up that end of the stick, you automatically pick up the other side. We have to be able to say, you know what, maybe I shouldn't go down that road. Because the reality of the matter is, you're right. Sometimes you catch yourself in situations and you're at the wrong place at the wrong time. And it may just be because you're hanging out on the corner and you going to get some milk, and then you stop to talk to the guys on the corner that's drug dealers, and all of a sudden you get swept up in a raid because you stopped to talk to guys who you know were up to no good in the first place, you know.
You know, the crime to me is the fact that as a black man or a brown man, any minority, you have to now be conscious of even how you go have a good time. You can't even just go out and have a good time like everyone else, because in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I might get pulled over for the kind of car I'm driving. I might get in trouble for how I'm dressed. I might get in trouble for this, for that. That's part of the crime. But since it's the reality, right, do you guys, now this documentary's out, you can get it on demand. Where's it available on demand?
You can go to any cable provider. It's also still playing at the IFC. You know, it's also still there, and it's been there for about 2.5 months now.
Do you guys show this to young men that are out hanging out on the corner or socializing with people they shouldn't be around, and say, look, man, we was around people we shouldn't have been around, and it got us in something that was completely wrong?
Well, I'm going to tell you, like, we don't get the opportunity to show them the film per se, but in terms of saying something, I've always said, you know, you have to say something because you never know when it's going to resonate with someone. Somebody told me years ago, man, pull up your pants. I'm 14 years old on 125th Street, and I'm looking at this old guy like, what does he know about, you know, being down and being cool? But the guy said, man, you look crazy. So I'm saying to myself, he don't know what he's talking about. But as he left, his words resonated with me, and I looked in one of those glass mirrors on 125th and said, oh, shucks. That guy's right. I never wore my stuff like that again. I did look crazy. You know, guys walking around looking like ducks with their, you know, they got their pants so low, and, you know, it's just not a pretty situation and a pretty sight, especially for the young women that are walking around. I mean, I have 5 daughters, so it's really, really, you have to say something. And the fact that the city made us out to be, they wanted us to be criminals. We were infamous, but they gave us a platform that we weren't supposed to survive on. The fact that we survived now gives us a platform where we can impart information and education and proper instruction to people so that they can be guided perhaps by our actions. They can look at us and say, damn, this happened to them. We don't want there to be another Central Park 5.
And so let's just talk to you guys, because you guys are the ones that are here. What are you guys doing now after, each of you did 7, you did 13 and a half. What is your life now?
Well, for me, I could probably speak for some of, for these guys also, our life is still a struggle. Every day, we have to put one foot in front of the other, and we have to walk on eggshells. And even though we go out and we speak to numerous kids, we go to numerous schools, and we try to get the message out as much as possible. But, we're still under that microscope because, our case is still pending. We have a civil suit with the city now that's been going on 10 years, and it's still pending. And as long as that case is open, that scar is always going to stay open. It will never heal itself properly. We'll never get a chance to finally close this case and move forward.
So people recognize you
all the time
from that incident.
Absolutely. All the time.
And so, are you currently working? Do you?
Yes. Yeah.
And do you mind saying what you do for?
I work for 1199 SEIU. I work for the Pension and Benefits Fund.
Okay.
I work in the mailroom there, so that's what I've been doing now for like the past 2 years.
And you, sir?
I work in healthcare. I deal with wireless networks. I usually say I play with toys all day, and it's fun stuff.
But that's what you enjoy.
Oh yes, indeed. I'm a technology guy.
So you are doing something after it was all said and done, you're able to do something that you enjoy and get paid for.
Absolutely. Actually, we do 2 things that we enjoy. Yeah. So we provide for our families, which is a great thing to be able to do. But then the second thing is that we also give back to the communities.
That's right.
We're also out there talking to young people. We're also actually engaging people in conversations and dialogues, so that, like I said before, that we don't want there to be another Trayvon Martin.
That's right.
Ramarley Graham.
That's right.
Central Park 5. All of these atrocities that happened continue to happen to people of black and brown colors.
Right. And
it's
you, sir, what are you doing these days?
Well, right about now, I had came home at bad time, 9/11. Bad economic time. So I did the construction thing.
Okay.
Everybody got laid off. So I just found myself, SSI.
So you're on getting government support.
Right.
So you said the case is a civil case right now.
Yeah.
The what you were charged with as youths is gone, sealed away, off your records.
Yeah.
Off the record.
So what happens right now? What's happening right now? What are you gunning for?
And why is this taking so long?
Well, it's taking so long because this is a stall tactic that the city likes to use against us. They send you these stack of waivers, and these waivers is them being given a chance to look into your life, piece by piece. So these waivers consist of medical records, work records, prison records. For our families, they went back 25 years. So for my dad, they looked at how many doctors have you seen in the last 25 years, and they wanted all this information.
Wait, but what is what your father
has no bearing on the case
to
at
do
all
with the fact that they locked y'all up incorrectly as adolescents? What does that have to do with anything?
It has nothing to do on the bearings of this case. What happens is that for the city, law department, they're not saying that we're innocent or guilty. All they're saying is that the police officers did nothing wrong. So this case is basically about credibility, and it's all about trying to establish bad credibility on your part when you get on that stand and testify.
What are you guys trying to get from this trial?
Well, justice.
So this is I'm not good at law. Civil is not suing for damages. You're not suing for anything.
Yes. You want money. You want it. There's money that, and look, and I straight up
should get money.
You should get money.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be this difficult. And I'll even go as far as to say, I know working in corporate America, right? The guy with the most money likes to stretch out the guy who doesn't have any money. Meaning the city's got people on staff all day to deal with this.
Yeah.
They know you guys, are just regular everyday individuals. You don't have lawyers on staff whose job it is to just run through paperwork and take phone calls. So they trying to stretch y'all out.
For some of us, they're also hoping that we pass on. Some of our family members that were actually part of the lawsuit have already died. My mom right now is fighting stage 4 cancer. You know what I'm saying? So it's like this whole thing about here you were in a struggle, and this thing has taken over your life for over 20 years.
Wow.
And
your
10
parents'
years,
lives, of course. That's
exactly. In 10 years of that time, we
Not even taken over, destroyed
completely. 10 years of that time, here we are still fighting the city just for justice. And the reason why they don't want to say that they were wrong is because it opens up a whole level of atrocities that happen. Everybody who was wronged by these same officers, these same
Sets a
judges,
precedent. Now
all
they
of a
get a
sudden it's
gang of
now like,
lawsuits.
wait, we got to go and investigate everything.
That's
now.
right.
Which we do.
You know what I'm saying?
Which we should,
which we should, and we do.
And listen, cops are humans. There's good ones, there's bad ones. And guess what? You guys did wrong. Y'all screwed this one up.
Yeah.
And somebody should pay.
They dropped the ball so bad. They dropped it so bad that if they were still looking for the perpetrator of the crime in 1989, there would have been a young Latina woman alive today who the real perpetrator of the crime, the Eastside rapist, Eastside slasher.
Oh, because
he murdered her and killed her. Well, he killed her after raping her, and in the process also killed her unborn child.
Yeah.
While her children were in the next room.
While you guys were locked up.
While we were locked up.
And they were saying, "Oh, we solved that case."
That's how foul this whole situation is.
The other piece of this too is, and we've talked about this on the air, the guy who recently pushed or they say pushed somebody in front of the subway train. I'm a firm believer that the person they have on trial, right, isn't the same guy that's in the video.
Right.
That's what I believe.
This
Just
happens-
looking at the video.
This
Just
happens
look
all the time.
There's built different. But I understand that the city, in an effort to make people feel safe and that work is getting done, they have a narrow window of time, 24, 48 hours, to find a perpetrator.
Exactly.
Right? And put that perpetrator on television so everybody at home says they're doing their jobs.
Yeah.
My tax money is going to the right things, and I feel safe.
Exactly.
And I feel like that's what happened to y'all.
Exactly.
They needed to find somebody. There was kids in the park.
Right.
There was easy targets. Boom, pow, we got them.
Guess what? And they're black and brown. Easy.
Easy.
Yeah.
No one's gonna fight
Yeah.
back. It's just easy.
Mateus Reyes committed a rape in Central Park on April 17th, 2 days before the April 19th rape. And what happened was they found him because the lady ID'd him through the stitches on his chin. And so they had his name. They had the marker already. So now they arrested us for the April 19th rape. But the DNA evidence came back, they said, all right, they never figured out, let's go with an ulterior motive. It didn't match us. And so what happened was that initial case that he committed on April 17th was closed within 6 weeks. And that's because they didn't want nobody to figure out, let's go in a different direction. They wanted them to stay on us. And he was never
And they
charged.
don't want to admit their mistakes.
Yeah, and he was never charged with that case at all.
Well, listen, we're glad you guys are out now. Thank you guys so much for coming out and joining us. We really appreciate it. The movie, The Central Park 5, you can get it on demand right now. It's still playing at the IFC Theater here in New York City, but definitely check that out on demand. It's an incredible story. An incredible director, too, Ken Burns, who did it, so I know it's going to be a fantastic story. And we're certainly happy you're here now.
And then also for, the people in New York City and people watching around the world checking this out, what can they do other than learn from this to support where you guys are at with the case?
Well, we always ask people to come out and support the Central Park 5 because, the battle's always won in the streets and there's always won by the people. And that's what they respect at the end of the day is the numbers. And so, in February, we have February 19th at 2 p.m., 500 Pearl Street, 26th floor. That's our next court date. It's a status hearing, and we always ask people to come out and support that. We're also on Facebook. We have the Central Park 5 Facebook page. We also have individual pages. We also have a website, which is central-park-5.com.
Perfect. And people can find out your court date information there and how they can support, et cetera.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed.